I'm in a weird and honestly incredibly uncomfortable situation with my sister. Let's call her Emily. And I just want to rant to someone because I don't have any super close friends and honestly don't want people I actually know in real life to know about this bizarre situation. My sister, 34, and I, 29, female, have always had a complex relationship. We grew up in a loving household, but as we got older, our personalities clashed. We took different paths in life, and our choices often led to comparisons and subtle competition between us. However, nothing could have prepared me for what unfolded recently. It all started when she came over to my house unannounced and extremely drunk. I opened the door after checking who it was and brought her in, and she told me she needed to vent about her problems. I was extremely confused and asked her what she meant, and she said that she found out her husband, Josh, had been cheating on her with a 22-year-old college student. I felt awful hearing this, but honestly, Josh has been a total a-hole for pretty much the entirety of their relationship, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't see something like this coming. Emily's marriage had been on shaky ground for quite some time. Apparently, her husband had been distant and secretive for months and often didn't come home all night. Emily couldn't help but notice the change in his behavior and finally decided to investigate. She had followed him in her car and saw him drive up to his ex's house. That pushed her over the edge and she got super drunk. She drank at this local town bar and decided to come over to my house the next morning because she didn't want to go back to her place. I tried to be as nice as possible, but after telling me what happened, she started making inappropriate comments about my husband, saying things like how lucky I was to have such a great husband and how she wished she had a husband like him. She even said that she wished she had met my husband instead of Josh. I thought it was weird, but harmless drunk talk, but I was proven very, very wrong. It did make me more than a little uncomfortable, but she was so drunk and heartbroken, so I just let it slide. I tried to comfort her and offer support, but the problem was that I had a very important work event to attend. I was almost ready when Emily showed up and was about to leave. I tried to delay leaving as long as possible, but there was no way I could miss the event. And Emily was in no state to drive home, and I didn't want to just put her in an Uber and leave it up to luck. Around 30 minutes after Emily showed up, my husband came back from work. He takes a weekly night shift and comes back around 10 in the morning and goes straight to sleep. By that time, Emily had passed out on our couch. I explained the situation to him and he told me it was all right and that he'll keep an eye on her while I'm at the event and asked me to be back as soon as possible. I felt bad leaving him with her as he was clearly tired and sleepy, but she had already passed out and he assured me that it was all right since it'll just be a couple of hours anyway. So I left for the event hesitantly. I was there for maybe 2 hours or so when I got a call from my husband. I couldn't pick up at the moment and texted him to ask what was up. He texted that I needed to come back home as soon as possible. I panicked and didn't know what to do. I couldn't leave the event for almost an hour, and the whole time my anxiety was just eating me alive. I finally made my way back home around 2 p.m. I ran inside and saw my husband in the living room alone. I asked him what happened and where Emily was, and he immediately tensed up. He said that he intended to stay up till I got back, but accidentally fell asleep on his gaming chair and woke up to Emily trying to climb into his lap. He freaked out and obviously asked her to get off, but she wouldn't and tried to kiss him. He pushed her off and yelled at her, asking what the hell she was doing. Apparently, she started crying and tried to convince him it was fine and that she won't ever tell me and she wants some comfort. My husband got really angry and asked her to get the hell out of our house, and she left after calling me some disrespectful names and screaming that he should drop the holier-than-thou act because men aren't actually faithful and all kinds of rubbish. I was completely overtaken by rage and I felt so bad for my husband. I immediately called up Emily, but she didn't pick up. Then I called Josh to ask if he knew where she was, and he said she was sleeping at their place. I hung up and immediately drove over. My husband tried to stop me, but I didn't listen to him. I went over to their house and Josh opened the door for me. He asked me what happened, and I just asked him to tell me where she was. He pointed to their bedroom, and I made my way over there and woke her up screaming. What she said has left me even more weirded out and disgusted than I was. First, she tried denying everything. I lied and told her that my husband's webcam was recording everything. This made her defensive and she started screaming nonsense like how I should divorce him now. I asked her why I divorced my loving husband when she's the one who made a move on me, and she said that if she has to get a divorce, I got to have one too, and that marriages are fake anyway. Josh was listening to everything and decided to intervene, which just made things worse, and the two of them started fighting. At that point, I was completely done with everything. These people are messed up, and I didn't want anything to do with either of them. I called her crazy one last time and got out of there. On the drive back home, I was just feeling extremely overwhelmed. I couldn't stop thinking of my husband and how traumatizing it must have been for him to go through that. I was hurt by my sister's actions. It's not just about my husband and my marriage, it's about the lack of respect she has shown towards me. I mean, sure, we don't have the most loving sisterly relationship ever, but I never thought she would try to sabotage my marriage by doing something so crazy. Since then, my sister has been acting like a complete nut job. I ignore her calls and texts as much as I can, and on the rare occasions we do talk, it's only to argue about what happened. I don't know what to do anymore. I love my sister, but I can't condone her behavior. I've talked to my best friend about the situation, and she fully agrees that my sister's behavior is unacceptable. My mom also found out about what happened, and as always, she's taking my sister's side. She says that Emily is going through an incredibly rough patch and that she was drunk when she made a move on my husband and that I should give her some time to get back to her senses. I'm still hurt and angry though, and I need some time to process everything that has happened. Update 1. This really blew up. Wow. I hope my sister doesn't come across this because she's also on Reddit. I appreciate all the advice, personal experiences, and support that so many of you have shared so far. It's kind of nice to know that I'm not alone who has faced such betrayals by family members. For those of you asking, my husband is doing well. He was pretty shaken up and initially was scared that I'll get mad at him as well, but I've assured him that I don't blame him at all. I've also apologized to him for letting that whole situation take place. I should have dropped off Emily at her place and then gone to work, even if that meant getting a little late. But obviously the only one at fault here is my sister. I'm not blaming my husband at all, and he knows that, so you guys don't have to worry about that part. Update 2. I don't understand why I'm getting hateful comments about how I'm acting towards my husband in this whole mess. A lot of you are saying that Emily assaulted him, and I just want to make sure that I agree with you. Not sure what about my post made anyone think I'm not on my husband's side. Just to clarify, I left it completely up to my husband to decide how he wants to go forward. I asked if he wants to press charges against Emily, but he decided against that because in his opinion, it's best to just move past this. To make sure he's completely comfortable, I have decided to cut off all contact with Emily. I've also spoken with my mom and made it clear that if she continues to take Emily's side, then I won't be on speaking terms with her either. Things are still tense between us, but I don't care as my priority is just on my marriage right now. Update 3. Thought of putting in an update to let you guys know that Emily and Josh are getting a divorce. I mean, everyone saw it coming. Also, she texted my husband and apologized for what she did, but he's still uncomfortable about what happened. And we've decided to stay no contact with her, at least for now. OP, I don't think you're taking this thing as seriously as she should. I mean, your sister assaulted your husband. If the roles were reversed, this definitely would have been treated as a much bigger issue. I think your husband is also downplaying the incident because he's understandably uncomfortable. I'd recommend suing her for assault because she needs to be held responsible for her actions. OP's sister is a complete disaster. She assaulted the poor guy who offered to stay up after a whole night of working to make sure she was fine. Also, the fact that she was asking you to divorce him? That's crazy. She's jealous, insecure, and completely immature. Your mom is also in the wrong for trying to play this off as a random drunk mistake. I hope your husband never forgives her and you stay in no contact with both your mom and your sister. Next story. So, I got a job at a private high school. The school gives free admission to the children of faculty and staff as well as to their lower grade schools. These schools are way better than the public schools in my area. I want to send my son to the private elementary school. Unfortunately, my son's mother was not really on board with this. She thought it would make things difficult since she also has a daughter who will be starting school next year. Our child custody agreement has a part where we cannot change our son's education without both of us agreeing, so my son couldn't go unless her mother said yes. Since the main issue she had was her daughter not being able to attend next year, I told my ex about the school's policy that siblings of current students have priority on the admissions list. So with our son enrolled, she will also be able to enroll her daughter. My son's mother was happy with the idea after that and agreed. The school has really early deadlines for things, so my son's mother was trying to enroll her daughter for the next school year. That's when she found out that while her daughter would get priority admission, she would have to pay tuition. The school does offer scholarships, but they're more for exceptional or diverse students, so her daughter is way down on the list. My son's mother is now very upset by this and thinks I tricked her even though it was obvious her kid wouldn't get in for free since she's not my kid. Still, she is insisting it's going to create problems down the line. For example, she thinks it will cause animosity between her daughter and our son, as he will have more opportunities. She also said it would be hard to deal with the kids being in different schools because they are far apart, about 15-20 minute drive difference. She wants to change our son back to public school, but she can't unless I agree to it. I still don't see the point. She hasn't made a convincing argument. On my side, the school is way better than his old school, and he is happy and settled and has friends at his new school. On her side, her daughter may get a little jealous, and she may have to drive a little more on the days she has our son. Edit. Just so everyone knows, I have since told my ex that I can drive our son to and from school every day if it makes things easier. NTA, common sense says that your son's half-sister won't get in free because she's not your child. You are doing right by your child, and you are doing more for the half-sister than you need to. You didn't need to tell her about the admission benefit. NTA, she would rather both kids have a worse education than one kid have a better education? Nonsense. You need to do the heavy lifting of getting him to school, though. This is your priority, so being his daily taxi service is on you. I'm not going to pass judgment on this. I come from a blended family where my older brother's paternal grandmother paid for his private education. And my parents scrimped and saved every spare bit of change all year long to pay for school supplies, and worked incredibly hard to be able to send my younger brother and I to that same private school. They believed it was better for their children to attend the same school together. I think they were probably right. I don't think you're TA for wanting to send your son to a good school, but I do think you intentionally worded your conversation with your son's mother to mislead her about the opportunity for her daughter. I believe that you intentionally did this so it would fall in your favor. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever that you would talk to her about the opportunity for her daughter, while not mentioning what the cost of tuition would be to ensure She could cover it unless you were intentionally withholding that information from her so she would agree to your terms. I think that was shady. I think that you know what you did. And ultimately, I do think this will negatively impact your son's relationship with his sister, possibly even his mother when she tries to curb the resentment between the two. I also believe that you don't care. Next story. Last weekend, I, 22, female, traveled on an 8-hour flight home to the US from Europe. I booked a bulkhead aisle seat in the economy well in advance because I needed the accommodations it offered. I have a disability that caused cysts to erode my spinal nerves for years before we caught it, and despite surgery, I live with severe chronic pain resulting from extensive nerve damage. This pain significantly worsens when I'm sitting in an upright position, but I knew I could manage the flight with my medication, leg room for slouching, and the ability to stand up and move around whenever I needed to ease the pain without having to repeatedly inconvenience potential seat neighbors by forcing them to get up so I could get through. Anyway, a family of 3 boarded soon after me, and the mom and baby, probably around 2 years old, were in the middle and window seats next to me. The dad was several rows behind in a window seat. As I expected, as soon as they were settled in, the mom turned to me and asked me to switch seats with her husband so he could be there to help with the baby. I politely told her, no thank you, I'd like to keep my seat, which was not received well. She badgered me for several more minutes, but I stood my ground. I even explained to her what I wrote above about my disability and why I needed the seat, and she said, "What a load of BS." My condition is invisible, so that really got to me. I called over a flight attendant because at this point I was tired of being insulted and called heartless. Also, the husband never once got involved in this situation, and she eventually got the woman to stop. She still spent the next 8 hours very loudly talking crap about me to the baby and making a show of yelling back to her husband when she needed something. But I put my headphones on, read my book, watched TV, got up and walked around when I needed to, and all around had an otherwise pleasant flight experience. Still, I did get a lot of dirty looks while the mom was making a scene. There was one guy who smiled and nodded at me. He was close enough to hear my story, which I appreciated, but most everyone else around was throwing me disgusted stares for a while. I heard one older lady in the row across whisper to her husband that I was a monster. I just feel like if they wanted to sit together, why didn't they buy 3 tickets next to each other in the first place? Perhaps I would have considered switching if it were only a minor inconvenience. I understand traveling with a baby must be hard, but in this case, switching would have negatively impacted my flight experience to a very high degree. And that isn't what I paid extra for when I purchased my ticket months in advance. I didn't think I was the AH, but it's hard to maintain that thought when you have a cabin of people looking at you like you kicked a lost puppy. So AITA for refusing to switch? Edit. To the people who commented about it, true, I know I shouldn't care what the others on the plane thought of me, and usually I don't care about that stuff. It's just that this was only my second time flying alone, and I have a pretty bad social anxiety, and it was just an all-round really uncomfortable situation. But you're right. NTA. You chose your seat and are entitled to it. She asked and you declined, as is your right. They should have booked 3 seats together if it was such a problem. And if there weren't 3 seats together when they booked, they should have known that it was a possibility that somebody wouldn't switch seats. Absolutely NTA. She's not an AH for asking, but she's a total, complete and utter AH for not shutting up when you said no. That's a long flight, man. She didn't even deserve an explanation, but you gave her the reason and she still didn't shut up. You did everything right, my friend. She sucks, and I feel sorry for that baby. NTA. Even if you did not have the disability, you would not be an a-hole. They very likely made their own bed by deciding to get the 2 bulkhead seats and gamble they would be able to badger their way into the third, rather than getting 3 seats together further back in the plane. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.